Imagine if every 30 days you lost a friend, client, coworker, or loved one to suicide or murder. Imagine looking around at your people, your community, and wondering who's going to be next. That's been my reality for more than 4 years now. I work with transgender people, and the rates of suicide and murder in the trans community are sky high. 2% of the general population of the United States will attempt suicide at least once in their lives. And that's horrible, but compare that to the fact that 41% of trans people will attempt suicide at least once in their lives. And that isn't due to some innate deficit or mental health issue. That is directly due to the way that society treats transgender people. My name is Jonah, and I think I'm a fairly boring, nerdy person. I'm a registered nurse. I like fishing. I collect ancient coins. I paint. I play too many video games. And I'm a transgender man. Often, when someone hears those two little words, transgender man, that becomes who I am to them. I am reduced to those two little words. My wife likes to say that being trans is one of the least interesting things about me, although I don't actually know what she does think is the most interesting thing, because she's usually just telling me that my hobbies are boring. But let's back up a second and talk about sex and gender. Gender identity is our own internal, innate knowledge of who we are. It's between our ears. It cannot be seen. Sex, on the other hand, is a combination of the genetics, the organs, and the secondary sex characteristics that we have. And sex is by no means as simple as XX equals female and XY equals male. About 1 in 400 people has what's known as a disorder of sexual differentiation. And basically, what that means is there are a lot of different conditions where the person's sex doesn't fit within those neat little molds of male and female. Not too long ago, we thought of race in absolutes as well. If someone had 1 drop of African American blood, they were considered black. Now, though, we often, but not always, understand that ancestry is frequently a rich blend, and mixed race people don't have to simply be one race or another. And yet, our society expects everyone to fit within this binary system of gender, to be either male or female. Social constructs of gender are introduced early and are woven throughout our lives. Oh, you're having a baby? Is it a boy or a girl? Pink versus blue, women raise children, men don't cry, smile if you're a woman, do the head nod to guys if you're a guy. So, these social constructs ignore that there is such a wonderful variety of identities and genders and ways to be. They create the assumption that if someone is trans, they must want to be the opposite gender. But gender is really a spectrum of possibilities, from agender to genderqueer and transgender, and so much more. It's incredibly important to realize there is no one right way to be trans, and no checklist that says this is how you transition. I do a lot of trainings for medical and behavioral providers to teach them how to provide competent care to trans individuals. Once, a coworker of mine saw a flyer for one of these trainings and asked, "So, how did you get into working with trans people?" I said, "Well, I'm trans myself." And then the floodgates opened. I got all sorts of cringe-worthy questions. "So, what's your girl name?" "Do you have a penis? Have you had the surgery?" My favorite one was, "Does your wife know?" My wife of 10 years at this point. "Shh, no, don't tell her." But it hasn't all been funny anecdotes. I've been through a lot of difficult things because I'm trans as well. I've been discriminated against at work. I lost friends and family when I came out. I've even been assaulted multiple times. Even before I knew I was trans, I scared women in public bathrooms because I was fairly masculine. Women have yelled at me, threatened me, even pulled mace on me. When I was 18 and newly out, I decided I was going to start using the men's room in public. I reasoned that if I identify as male and I scare women in public bathrooms, I should use the men's room in public, even if my ID still listed me as female. Shortly after, I was attacked in a men's restroom by several guys. They realized I was trans. They yelled slurs. They began kicking and punching me. They broke ribs. I yelled for help, but none came. Well, actually, one guy did come, but he joined in with them against me. They urinated on me and left me bleeding on the floor. While that's a very hard story to stand up here and tell in front of a crowd, it's harder to do so because I stand up here in front of you afraid. Because as much as you attendees of TEDx are an enlightened crowd, full of curiosity, searching for knowledge, there is every chance that at least one of you has a problem with me because I'm trans. Every time I come out in public, there is some risk to me. And I'm not even really one of the most at-risk types of trans people. Transgender women, people of color, folks with non-binary gender identities, and youth are the most targeted by discrimination and violence. When you hear about assaults like mine, it's easy to understand how these kinds of events can have a huge impact on a person's life. What's harder to understand is the impact of the smaller things, the microaggressions, the microtraumas, and what these can do to a person. I'm talking about things like being misgendered or called the wrong name. It's kind of like sandpaper. Swipe your arm once, you're probably going to be fine. It probably won't even really hurt. But do it repeatedly, day in and day out, and pretty soon you're going to have a raw, painful wound. You used to be a girl? I never would have guessed. You know, if you did your hair differently, you'd pass better. You used to be a girl? I can totally see it now. In the medical field, these kinds of microaggressions often play out as treating trans identities as illnesses, outright refusals to provide basic medical care, and invasive and unnecessary questions. Any of these will create a barrier to a trans person for accessing basic medical care. For example, a few years ago, I had a sinus infection. I went to a clinic for treatment. I explained my symptoms to a provider, and after a short exam, he agreed that I had a sinus infection. And then he opened my chart. He saw that I'm trans. He spent the next 20 minutes questioning me about my sex life. I really wanted to say to this guy, look, I don't know what kind of freaky things you think I'm doing, but it has absolutely nothing to do with my sinus infection. Can I please just get some antibiotics and be on my way? In this case, I had the privilege of choice. I could have chosen to walk out rather than to endure his questions and curiosity. My nursing license and my income allowed me that privilege. But the reality for many trans people is different. We are 4 times more likely to live in extreme poverty, and a poor trans person may not have another opportunity to obtain care. Trans people die because emergency workers cut away their clothing and find out they have genitalia they did not expect, and then they stop giving life-saving care. They die because doctors don't want a man with cervical cancer in their waiting rooms. They get insurance coverage for a broken arm denied because the insurance company says that their broken arm is related to their transition, because when she broke her arm, the trans woman was playing softball on a women's softball team. While trans people face many, many kinds of injustices, I continue to be awed by the amount of resiliency that I witness. Our community is full of people who are joined together through that one single bond, that one aspect of personhood, but they are such a diverse and amazing group of people. And all of the learning and the work that I've done has led me to this one simple kernel of knowledge. And if there's one thing I want you to know, it's this. Trans people are part of the natural spectrum of human diversity, and diversity makes all of us stronger. My search for my authentic self has led me to do a lot of introspection. I live a more mindful life because of my experiences with gender identity in society. I've met wonderful people, and I've gotten to laugh at bizarre things like arguing with an emergency department doctor about whether or not I had testicles, or casually letting it slip in conversation, much to the confusion of the people I was talking to, that I used to be in the Girl Scouts when I was a kid. I wouldn't be who I am without the journey that I've had. My name is Jonah, and I like who I am.